Welcome back. What's up, Rudy? I see what you're on today. Okay.
Yes, sir. A little mana.
A little bit.
Actually, I didn't really listen to mana that much growing up. My parents don't really like it.
Really?
Yeah, I got into it maybe in college.
Oh, you
When I
wow.
went to parties
You
and
missed out, man. That's my shit.
yeah,
That's my shit.
it's live. I enjoy it now.
Yeah, I love mana. So what we got on the docket, man? What do we got going on?
Yeah, man. Welcome back. Thank you for if you did listen to episode 1. This is now episode 2.
Nobody listened to episode 1.
I mean, that would suck.
Yeah.
This is pointless then.
Yeah.
But if you did, thank you guys. We appreciate it. I do apologize for any awkwardness or choppiness. Right, it's our first episode, kind of. It was our first official episode, hopefully. But yeah, thanks for hanging in with us. Right, it's a learning process. We're kind of learning how to manage, to do all these things and balance these things. Shout out to our interns for helping us along this process, and one of them even helped us come up with the name. Right, that's the one you brought, your intern.
Yeah. I mean, it helped a little bit, but ultimately the idea was mine.
Okay, cool. Well, shout out to them.
I'm totally joking.
Cafecito before this, she me up was really good. Shout out to them for that. Yeah. But yeah, guys, welcome back. Episode 2. I think we have probably one of our more serious conversations to have. But we'll see how it goes, right? I think there's a lot to talk about with what's happened this week.
Oh boy, is there.
Yeah, this is today is what, the 10th? Is today the 10th? January 10th.
I've lost all sense of time.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know.
And it's just the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
2021 has a lot of 2020 energy.
Yeah, it's his 2020 the remix.
Yeah, bro, literally.
You know what I'm saying?
But yeah, so of course this week we had a lot happen at the Capitol in DC, and I think that kind of was something that we can use to also talk about, Trump, especially. We were going to talk about Trump, right? At some point, and I think this made me realize that this is probably a good time because he is on his way out of office, and I didn't want us to have an episode down the road where it seemed like we were coming back to Trump when he was out of office, right? I feel like that would have seemed like we were kind of coming back, and almost would have had we're harboring,
Yeah, no, it's the perfect time. I mean, like you said, when the frick is the inauguration, the 20th, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a perfect time to just kind of look, reflect, look back, and just discuss a little bit.
Absolutely.
Over his, I guess, time in office.
Yeah, man, what a time. But yeah, before we jump in,
we made it.
Yeah, we made it, man.
It was a little bit touch and go there for a while. You remember, dude? Remember when the craziest thing was on your feed or on Twitter was North Korea trying to blow us up?
Dude, that was 2020. Yeah, dude, yeah.
Man, go ahead.
Entire president. Yeah, no, it's been a while, right? And it's kind of hard to kind of look back and there's so much to talk about in regards to this topic. One of the things that I do want to preface, right, this isn't the political episode. I definitely think we're going to have an episode where we talk about Latinos in politics and kind of, moving forward, the contributions that I think we are going to should be making, and the impacts that we'll have in that, realm. But this isn't that. This is kind of us using, what happened this week to kind of open the door to talk about, what we've seen change, and yeah, just reflect, right? A lot of reflection here. And so, but before we do the reflection, I guess
for those who live completely in the rock, why don't you give us a quick what went down? What are you talking about?
So January 6th, right, was kind of it's almost ceremonial, right? It doesn't really mean a whole lot. It really is, right? The Congress, right, Senate, and the House of Representatives meet to certify the election, right? They count the electoral votes. And it's just a process where they just kind of go one by one, state by state in alphabetical order, and they count up the votes, and then officially, right, Joe Biden's victory would have been certified.
And then what happened?
So they got to Arizona, and there was an objection, and so at that point they have to break out. But before or in the middle of them breaking out to debate, they started to storm the Capitol.
Who is they? Who are you talking about, Rudy? Who would do such a thing? I don't. What? Storm the Capitol?
Dude,
it's crazy.
Isn't that wild? Even just saying those words.
I mean, I'm down with
movie.
storming Area 51, but the Capitol.
The Capitol, bro. Dude, that never happened. We never stormed Area 51.
Wow.
Whatever happened.
They should take notes.
Take notes, bro. Yeah, this is how you do it, right? Because they got away with it. They actually that again. wild to even be able to say those things, right? They stormed the Capitol successfully, right? Well, I guess as successful as I could imagine that process would go. And so when you ask who, right, it was pro-Trump supporters, right, kind of trying to protest. And then at some point that protest really became, what many are calling, and myself included, just domestic terrorism, right? Because it wasn't peaceful, it turned violent. There was
that's important.
There was casualties, both from the, domestic terrorist side and from the Capitol Police. And so it's a crazy event, but that's kind of what happened. And I think there's a lot to reflect on. And so, that's kind of the first question. Like, what was your initial reaction? How did you feel when you saw what was going on?
Shocked, dude. I mean, it's crazy, right? I mean, on the one hand, shocked. On the other hand, it's kind of like, what else? What else? After the crazy year, and I mean, over the past 4 years, there's been a lot of unprecedented, crazy things to go down, political wise. But 2020, as we all know, was just crazy. Period. Right. So initially, no, yeah. I mean, I felt complete shock. Like, yo, what is going on? Like, this is crazy, right? But ultimately, it also kind of got to a place where, you know what, I don't expect anything else really. Like, there's a certain
it almost fits, right? It fits.
Yeah. It wasn't a surprise. Kind of like it was almost. It's so sad. It's so crazy to think about. There's like this what's the word I'm looking for here?
I don't know.
Desensitized. There we go.
Okay.
Excuse my English.
It's a second language.
Yeah. It's almost like I've been desensitized to this sort of just their
thing. Yeah.
Their fervor and their like intensity and just the lengths that they're willing to kind of.
It's very extreme behavior.
Yeah. Extreme.
Storming the Capitol is about as extreme as it can get.
Yeah, for sure. And so it's kind of just like, yep, that checks out.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I expect. So that's kind of I was just in disbelief, shocked, but at the same time, not surprised. I don't even know how that works, but that's how I was at with it. But it was absolutely crazy. I don't know if did you feel the same or did?
Yeah, it was shocking, right? But like you said, like it fits kind of the rhetoric that, these individuals have shown. And right, that I feel like Trump has kind of enabled, and if anything, he has encouraged these individuals. Right, we're not gonna go down without a fight. Like, we're gonna fight to the very end. Like, right, like saying that there's always an avenue. Like there's something that we can do, and encouraging people to take it into their own hands. Right, so it's not surprising, but at some point, in my head, you think that there's gonna be a point where they won't cross the line, and they never cease to. And at this point, it's just kind of sad, and it's very frustrating when you see these things happen. And there's a lot of anger that builds up personally, right? And I've talked to other individuals, and they've said much the same, right? It's there's a lot of anger that's rooted in frustration, because, right, we've both said this, right? What if those weren't white bodies storming the Capitol, right? But majority, right? Because obviously there was a couple of non-white individuals, but for the most part, right, pro-Trump, white Americans storming the Capitol. And you ask yourself the question, what if that was a group of brown or black and brown bodies?
I mean,
right?
we don't have to ask. We know.
Yeah, I think we all
saw
know, right?
what the Capitol looked like during the
BLM protest.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they was armed and ready, right? And so it's sad to even think that you have to ask yourself.
They certainly won't letting people in.
Yeah, absolutely not.
So.
And yeah, you make an excellent point, right? During the Black Lives Matter protest, which, right, I am an individual that thinks that those protests had a lot of worth, right? And they were fighting for something that had a lot of value, right? These were black lives that, are being lost, and that population just felt like it was their time to fight back because, their voices weren't being heard, right? And the type of reaction is much the same, but you look at like what these individuals are fighting for, and none of it makes sense, right? Like I joined those Black Lives Matter protests because I feel like, you know, I was called to be there to support, like, you know, my friends and people that I care for a lot, right? And for myself included, right? Like I am I'm a Mexican American individual, and so I want to be a part of that fight along with, you know, with people that I call my brothers.
Absolutely.
And then you look at what these individuals were fighting for, and it doesn't make sense, right? Any sort of critical thinking would lead you to understand that it's an empty and an extremely dangerous fight that they're fighting. And that's the frustrating part, right? Is if we were to react in the same way, right? They're reacting to nothing, right? To something that has no substance. And they're willing to go to these extremes, but yet when we do the same, like, right, we know it would not go in that manner.
I mean, yeah.
The casualties would have been immense, like, right? Like they would have started capping people.
For sure.
Like, it would have happened, right? And then you see police, right, taking selfies with these people, right? You see people smiling, right? It almost felt like it was just like this big party for them, right? Like, and they posted this information, right? Like, just, oh, you know, just stormed the Capitol. There was one picture that was like, oh, you know, I need a nice glass of champagne after, you know, storming the Capitol. Like, people taking pictures outside their window, outside shattered windows, right? Like, after, this is a federal building that, you know, is a symbol of American democracy, and they literally destroyed it. And they're just having a good old time.
And that's where, and I think that's what really got to me, because like I said earlier, shock, disbelief, kind of acceptance, whatever, but that specifically is what made me, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's, you know, we talk about, you know, this wouldn't happen if it was, you know, black, brown, whatever, right? But when I just see the sheer audacity and like how what's the word, how like nonchalant, like this is normal, this is regular type shit, right? Like, dude, to take a picture
they don't even question like should I do this or not?
No,
right?
to like sit there and pose in the floor of, what was it, the house or whatever, the dude who was in at the podium or whatever
he's like sitting in the VP's chair,
and he's just chill, like
legs up.
What? And it's just like having the black time of their lives, like you're saying. It's a, was that Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever? It's a Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday afternoon.
It was a Wednesday.
Okay, so Wednesday afternoon. It's infuriating because you just know that someone with a different skin tone would not get.
Right. That's a privilege that
the epitome of privilege. Like,
absolutely.
If anybody needs it explained to them.
That's been where the conversation's going. And again, like I said, any kind of critical thinking, right? You see privilege as the root of their actions, right? Like, if anybody that looked like us tried to do that, right? Like, I would, if someone came up to me like, "Hey, bro, you want to go storm the Capitol next week?" I'd be like, "I'm not trying to die." Like, you know, like I will get shot upon entrance, right? Like, if I act in an aggressive manner trying to enter a federal building, especially the Capitol of the United States.
People have gotten shot for way less.
Absolutely, right? And that's the frustration, right?
We could we're all in,
and we could talk about this for forever, right? And we don't want to, you know, sit here and just talk about it, even though like it definitely deserves that space, right? But we don't want to just keep going on and on. But that conversation kind of leads us into, again, like what we talked about, Trump's presidency coming to an end. And I think it's a good moment for us as a people to kind of reflect on maybe the things that we've learned over these last 4 years. Yeah,
I think it's kind of like the events is a good way to cap out and sit there and be like, how did we get here?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
because what are they ultimately mad at? They're ultimately mad that their beloved and worshipped Trump lost an election.
Absolutely.
So how did we get here?
And that's a symbol of like them kind of, I guess, feeling like they're losing their country, right? Like they're losing it to like this new America, I guess that we're starting to see. But I don't know, man. There's a lot there, and like I said, we're not experts on any of this subject matter, but like we definitely just want to share our thoughts and how we feel, and hopefully you guys relate to that. But like I said, we want to talk about a little bit about Trump, and because he definitely enabled these actions, and he, if anything, encouraged them. In my opinion, right? And I think a lot of people feel that way, especially people that have the ability to, I'm gonna say this a lot, like to critically think about what was happening here. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I guess in your opinion, and speaking from your Latino Mexican American perspective, what are your biggest takeaways from the last 4 years now that we can finally say that his presidency is coming to an end.
If there's one thing Donald Trump is good at doing is what's the word I'm looking for? Stoking the fires, kind of like
Stoking the flame, I think is the saying.
Whatever. Just speaking to his core demographic and riling them the fuck up. Yeah. Like he motivates like no other, right? Yeah,
absolutely.
Like he's a master at that. And what's it called? I just lost my train of thought. Where was I going with that? So he's just we're just at a part where he's caused a lot of divide amongst several people, but I think particularly in the Latino community, and I think we saw that as a result of with the result of the elections. I think we saw huge parts of the Latino community vote one way and huge parts vote another.
Absolutely.
Right. And so I think that speaks to that division in our own
community.
In our own community. So that was a big one, right? And for me, I have a lot of trouble rationalizing how somebody who is in my same kind of looks like me, my same cultural background or whatever, can even
lean that way, feel that way.
I don't understand it. It's beyond me. You know what I mean? Like when someone comes into a presidential race off rip and is yelling to build a wall, calling people rapists and murderers and all this, that I don't even care what you're like. That's I'm out. You know what I mean? Like
absolutely.
You've lost me.
It's a terrible way to talk about it, even though, right, like there's people who will try and say like, well, if you look at everything he said, right, like he said only certain, like blah 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 blah, like that doesn't matter, right? Your ability to still even say those words about, even if it's a small subset of these people, like that's still not okay. And it's very frustrating. But I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead. I mean, I think that's I don't know if you have any, maybe Rash, do you have any sort of reason why you think anybody would?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think, right, like you said, like we've, over the last 4 years, I've reflected and now seen that like there is a lot of division in the country in general, right? Like you said, he's a very divisive individual, but just kind of looking at the Latino community in general, right, he's done the same thing. And I've asked myself, like, where do these Latinos for Trump come from, right? Because in 2016, I didn't really feel like I saw that, or I didn't see that. But this last election, I feel like I saw a lot of it, and it was everywhere.
Was it? So I will be the first time. I didn't really participate too much. I didn't really follow as much in the last election, at least like the results wise, right?
Like the last election, talking about 2020 or
2016? 2016. Okay. Like I wasn't glued to CNN or whatever. Now, I was. So I actually don't know, and I should have done research, but I'm speaking off the cuff here. So I don't know what the results kind of look like, what the breakdowns were a little bit. I don't have
statistics on what that looked like as far as what percentage of Latinos voted for him and whatnot. But I just feel like what I saw with my own eyes, like I saw a lot less of it compared to what I saw in 2020. I feel like I paid about
for
the
sure.
same amount
That's a good point. Yeah,
right? So that's my thing, right? Over the last 4 years, I feel like that support has actually grown. And so it's interesting to kind of try and understand how and why that is, right? And I've written a couple of things to kind of like help kind of walk my mind through that. And I think both in the people that I know that I surround myself with, like they're not Latinos for Trump, but I've met some of these people just either at work or just randomly. And I think I can kind of start to put them in certain categories, right? And I'm not trying to put these people in a box, but this is just what I see. I think you have a big group of supporters that come from people that have kind of turned they're very Americanized, right? And a lot of times what you see with these individuals is that they've almost kind of turned their back on their communities to fit in and to assimilate into what like they think an American should be, right? Like just very pro, like American, like
gung-ho,
yeah,
right.
Exactly, right. And so unfortunately, a lot of the time those people turn their back on individuals like you said that look like them, right? Mm-hmm. Like they look like me and you, but the way they talk, the way they refer to even like their own family members that like maybe just distant is very different than the way that I would. And I don't understand them.
And it's crazy because I think a lot of times you have to jump through hoops to do that. and they got
it's very forced.
A big ass nopal on their frente.
Bro, absolutely. Right? And that's what doesn't make sense, right? Because I'm sure that the people that they are trying to, you know, gain, like they're trying to gain their trust, they're trying to join these, you know, circles of, you know, MAGA. I really don't know what circles they're trying to like join, but when those people see them, I know they see the same thing than when they see me, right? Now, as soon as they start to say like, oh yeah, like I'm pro-Trump, like MAGA and XYZ, like those would be like, yeah, come here, my Mexican friend, like come join me, right? Like, and you see these kind of clips on, you know, the internet from like, you know, Trevor Noah and the Daily Show, right, where like they're like, yeah, look, and even Trump, right, will like when he sees like
bring up that Mexican.
Exactly.
Let's show off that I got Mexican supporters.
My black friend, my Mexican friend, right? Like, he's very much to point out, like, if he sees that you're on his side, right? Like, he uses your...
Check out this token black dude, this token Latin dude, this
like,
token
your
whatever.
identity to be like, look at my Mexican friend. Like, look at this, right? And so, I don't know if they get a sense of pleasure out of that, but I definitely think that's one group of individuals. I definitely think there's... And this may be the more complex one, but there's a group of, like, Latinos that come from, like, maybe socialist countries. Like Venezuela is one example that stands out to me, and based on their experiences, right, they are very anti-socialist, right? When they hear kind of this rhetoric from, you know, Democrats and from the left, when they hear democratic socialism, right, like their ears stand at attention, and I reasonably understand their reaction, right? Like it makes sense when I look at it, right? Now, with that being said, I don't agree with the way that they feel about it, because I think it's not the same type of socialism, right? Like it's very different, right? This is the United States. Like, what happens in these countries, I don't think could even happen here. But at the same time, as much as I get frustrated when like they're saying the things that they're saying, I try to approach it from a place of empathy and understanding, and it's very difficult, but that's another group of individuals, right? Like these anti-socialists.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
I don't know if you know, like, or if you had an opportunity to talk to a lot of these individuals. I only know one, like, closely.
I don't think I've ever met. No,
I know multiple, but I only have talked to one closely from work, and I don't know. Like, I try to be understanding, but they're also kind of.
That's a good point. I mean, I can't. Like, I'm not gonna say I don't even know politics all that well within my own country. So I'm not going to sit here and speak on politics in
another country.
In another country. So, and that's where it could be tough, I think, to like have those discussions with someone, because it's like, I mean, who am I to tell you what your experience was, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know,
but then it gets to the point where they start to spew the same rhetoric that like these like right wing, like pro like Trump extremists start to spew. And at that point, that's when I stopped caring all that much about trying to, like, I will always respect, like, right, like your reality and like your story and like where you come from. But I mean, if you start saying the same BS or bullshit that, you know, this man is saying, then
it's kind of, you guys, it's almost like you lose credibility, right? It's not about just like discounting them, but it's you know, you can, and that's the thing, you can have these discussions with people, like you can. I don't think that you should just discount a whole group of people just because they support Trump or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's the way they go about it, and it's certain things that they say where it's just they lose credibility, and there's no reasoning. There's no, we're not gonna get anywhere here, right? Like you're not conceding like anything
at all.
So
absolutely.
It's tough.
And that's the frustrating part for me, because I feel like I do try and make myself open to like hearing it, and maybe I don't do a good job of it, right? Like, because I think I am, but maybe I'm not. But it is very frustrating, and a thought that I just had to kind of come back to the point of the Americanized individuals. One of the things that I do think happens is you get individuals that maybe start to feel like they're not Latino enough, and then they find comfort in Americanizing themselves, right? Like, well, if I'm not Latino enough, you know what I can be? I can be MAGA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we spoke a little bit about that in our last episode, about whenever you perhaps feel uncomfortable with a certain part of you know your culture or whatever, and you end up finding, you know, end up trying to be something that you're not initially. I mean, after a while,
making yourself fit in somewhere.
Yeah, your lie kind of becomes your reality in a sense.
Absolutely.
So yeah, No, that's a very good point.
Said. For sure. So, okay, divided community, right? That's kind of one of our biggest takeaways. And we can go into like the details of that and spend, an hour talking about it.
I mean, all of these can be their own.
Absolutely. For myself, like the next biggest takeaway that I think I've had has kind of been looking at maybe, I don't know how to describe it, but maybe like cultural norms and just how, I guess, strong they really are. And how much of an influence they can kind of have in our households. For example, like machismo, I think is one that I think I always knew existed. Maybe like in general, I'm just coming to learn and understand it a little bit more and more. Right? There's been a lot of movements in Mexico, as well as like kind of just educational articles that I've read talking about that dynamic in our culture. But I think that like Trump does a great job of appealing to men, like Latino men, that have these, characteristics that machismo men display, right? And that women that enable it, right, that they'll just kind of go along with these issues, right? So I don't know if you've ever felt that or seen that in these last 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. I think it's something where even, okay, so we all know that there's a lot of toxic masculinity and machismo in the Latin community, right? Like the whole like, oh, the woman cooks and cleans or whatever, right? That's just the tip of the iceberg with it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a lot. So I think what you're saying about Trump, how he speaks with such disregard and sort of arrogance because he does just feel, he's this emboldened man. He can say anything and get away with it. And I think even like within the Latin community, that doesn't faze a lot of people because they're so accustomed to it, right? It's again going back to like that's regular. Like to them, like to someone who's maybe more sensitive to that, or like you, me, whatever, a lot of people, right? You hear the things he says, you're like, whoa, right? How the heck did he? Excuse me? And they check out, right? But for a lot of those people with a lot of exemplify a lot of machismo, it doesn't even face them again. So it's and then some can even relate to it, right? And
exactly, that's exactly what I was.
And they're like,
say.
that's my guy. Ahora sí, vámonos.
Yeah, they align themselves with it, right? Like because if they see that the president of the United States is exhibiting these kind of behaviors, then I can definitely do this.
I want to be like that guy.
I want to be like him, right? Jeez. Yeah, like it validates the way they act. And I guess before, we've already kind of dove into it a little bit, but machismo, I looked up the definition really quickly, and this is like a 3-second Google search.
What does it mean?
Was defined...
Come on, Webster.
As a social behavior pattern in which the Latino male exhibits an overbearing attitude to anyone in a position he perceives as inferior to his, demanding complete subservience. So
for Trump, that's everybody?
Literally, yeah, right. Like he definitely like holds himself in this very, very high regard. And so just looking at, these issues that we have in our own community, I think when you look at a lot of the Latino for Trump supporters, I see a lot of that. And I see how deeply rooted that is in our culture and how he's really spoken to that demographic because we saw a big wave of like when you look at the demographic of people that voted for him in 2020, his biggest gains from 2016 were with these men. And it was big for him, right? And again, it's just seeing yourself in someone else and finding comfort in that. And then that just speaks to the issue that we have to discuss. Yeah, it's in our community. It's crazy because I mean I think a little bit comes from Latin people. I mean, have a lot of pride, right? Yeah, I think we are a prideful people. Yeah, for sure. We have a lot of pride. We are prideful people. I can't speak. Jeez. Does that make you nervous? A little bit. I'm kind of razzled a little bit. You're showing a little chest through that sweatshirt there, buddy. No, but seriously, they're very prideful people, right? And so, the men, if you peel back a little bit on the machismo, you understand that, like, maybe they came up as, like, oh, I have to provide for family, this, that, and the other. Like, they're just these strong guerreros or whatever, like, right? But it's such a a slippery slope or dangerous, like, kind of line to toe, because that very quickly can become
that toxic masculinity,
Absolutely.
problematic machismo, all that shit, right? So, and then we end up seeing the result, which is, you know, you become a Trump supporter.
Yeah,
watch out.
Yeah, and that sounds like we're saying like being a Trump supporter is bad.
Okay, you become a crazy Trump supporter.
But I mean, I think it is. I don't know, like. I when it comes to Trump supporters, right, I do tend to put them in two categories, right? Like I put them in the more radicalized extreme, like pro, like
here's the thing, Rudy. Here, not to cut you off, but I think, you know, maybe 4 years ago you could see it, right?
Yeah.
Whatever, you know, this guy is a Trump supporter, but with every passing day, every passing year that's gone by, every action that has gone on, certainly there had to be a point where someone says, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't be a Trump supporter because there's just the amount of things
so many things.
So you know what? So we don't want to just say, oh, Trump supporters are bad, but if you're still a Trump supporter through everything, through his every single action, that's when I
definitely question your
rationality.
Moral, your
morality.
Moral,
you have no moral compass at this point.
I don't think you do, right? Or I mean, you have it, but it does off. Not work. Like
clearly, your ideologies are skewed.
Yeah, like it just doesn't make sense.
Sounds like we're attacking. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I don't want to seem like we are attacking a group of people, but like I do feel very strongly about like, you know, just there's a lot of hate in that group of people. And again, a lot of it is hate for people like us. Mm-hmm. So it's very frustrating to see people that look like us join that side of this battle that we're kind of fighting.
I think another thing that's very prevalent in Latin communities, Latin culture, is this sense of racism, straight out racism. I think we can say absolutely. There's a lot of racism and colorism, right? Some of it's a little bit more subtle. You know, I think we're very aware that racism does exist. I think we alluded it a little bit to it in our last podcast episode, where you know, if you have kind of black friends growing up, they just automatically like, oh, it's a black. Oh my God, what?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
They're shook, right? It's not. They're like, what? You know, maybe they're not like hateful, or whatever, but it's just that kind of sort of off factor.
They definitely play into like stereotypes and. Sure.
And so I think that leads, and even let like another race out of it, even within our own community, right? I know, again, I'm Mexican, so in Mexican communities, right? Like in Mexico, I think if someone calls you like ese niño prieto, like that's bad, right? Like, you know, the light skinned, you know, fair skinned kids or like the quote unquote rich kids or the whatever, right?
Yeah. And you see that in our culture, like in TV and in magazines and music and everywhere.
Yeah, and so I think that leads to this like phenomenon of like self-hate and hating your own kind of culture, and again, this goes back to no longer wanting to be a part of it and turning your back on it and wanting to be something that you're not, right? And it sucks. It's unfortunate, but I do think it's very prevalent, and it definitely played a role over these past 4 years, right? Like we definitely see that there's, as a result, a lot of people did go ahead and they found was a sense of belonging within the MAGA crowd, within the Trump community, right? And now they're out here shouting things like build that wall, right?
Absolutely.
Like it's crazy. It's mind-boggling.
They align themselves with like this racist rhetoric, and I think, like you said, right, like thinking about where I am now in comparison to 4 years ago, and in our community just in general, right, I've come to realize that this is a very prevalent issue, and it is a deeply rooted issue, and there's microaggressions, right, and there's these little subtle comments that get made, like you mentioned, right, about like, you know, el prieto or whatever it may be, and we have to have these conversations about like why do you think it's okay to say these things? Because I, growing up, like definitely can think back to moments where like my dad has said some things, and I've told my dad blatantly like before, like, you can't say this. This is not okay.
Yeah.
This is racist. Mm-hmm. And this is like recently as well. Like not even like growing up, right? Like I had a lot of black friends growing up. And he's definitely said some things to me about like bringing friends over, like, and it's a conversation that you never really want to have, one, like with your parents or your close friends or whoever it may be, and definitely not with yourself, right? And I'll use myself as an example. like I said, I grew up in Dallas, Texas, in a minority neighborhood. I grew up playing basketball. I grew up with a lot of black friends, and so my relationship with the N-word was one where I was very comfortable using it for a long period of my life, right? Even through high school and through college. I am a part of a historically black fraternity, and looking at where I am now in comparison to 2016, I no longer use that word in any way, shape, or form, right? Even when I'm like singing a song, when I'm amongst my closest like friends that like I feel like I could kind of get away with using the word, like I don't want to anymore, right? And I did fight that battle for a little bit where I was like, man, you know, like I get it, but like it's me, you know what I'm saying? Like
it's just how I grew up. I don't
exactly.
You know,
it's how I grew up. I just, you know, I'm not using this word with.
I'm not saying it in a hateful way, right?
Yeah, I'm not using the ER, but when you really look at like what it means on a deeper level, I think it's not hard to say like this isn't okay, and that's a conversation that needs to happen more and more. And I try. And if you've ever tried to have a conversation like that with someone who just won't budge, it's very difficult, and it can get like very aggressive very fast as well. But again, I think a lot of that is rooted in some of the deeper issues that our community has, and it's just been highlighted, I think, over the last 4 years because, like you said, they align with this rhetoric that this man speaks, and it's racist rhetoric, and
it just feeds to the divisiveness. Again, we spoke about how divided the Latino community is, and this is a huge part of it, right?
Yeah.
And it seems there's like a generation or a large portion of it that understands that racism is wrong, understands not only racism, because I think a lot of time too as well, not to excuse it or or whatever, but like the older generation, like parents or whatever, I don't think it's always like blatantly like purposefully racist, you know what I mean? Like with the comments like, oh, morenito, prieto, like even like, oh, why are you so dark? You know, like it's okay, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think it's always purposefully racist, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that makes any sense.
But it's just out of ignorance most of the time, right?
Exactly.
Like, and it's not knowing how to like act in these situations.
Exactly. But ultimately we see what the end result is, and it's just divisive, and we get to places of, again, self-hate and stuff like that, and I think we saw a lot of that over the past 4 years.
Really quickly, that I don't know why, but this reminded me of right, like not knowing like how to react and act in these situations. Mm-hmm. I have a friend, his name's Collins, who I took to Mexico with me. This was maybe like 2-3 years ago now. And like I said before, like my family comes from like El Rancho, like it's a very, very small pueblo. Mm-hmm. And it was my cousin's wedding, and I took him with me. Bro, the reaction, because he's Nigerian.
It's like he's an alien.
Bro, literally the reaction when like this man like got out of the car and everyone saw him, like they were like, hey, ¿quién es este morenito?
What's going on?
Like, who is this?
Code blue.
Bro, it was so, and a lot of it was very innocent, right? Like people were genuinely like interested and shocked, and were like, yo, like what's going on here, right? And some of it is just like not knowing, like you said.
And not to like take this completely off the road, I think that some of them react kind of like, and we're like, yo, what's up? And we're like really cool, like really anxious to like get to know him and like impress him and like.
Bro, absolutely. You know what's so funny, right? It was my cousin's wedding. And so, you know, this is like where we're from, like weddings are huge, right? We had it on a basketball court, and there's a huge banda, right? And I'm talking about like 500, 600 people.
You said basketball court. Like basketball courts aren't that huge.
An outdoor basketball court.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, right? An outdoor basketball court, and it is huge, right? So there's like I said, 500-600 plus people easily, right?
Who sat at the free throw line?
At some point, shut up. At some point, everyone from other pueblos knows that, hey, like, you know, so and so is getting married, and then everyone just goes, even if they don't know who's getting married, right? They just pull up to dance till 3 or 4 in the morning. But when
ya se armó la carne asada. Órale. Vámonos.
But whenever they were taking pictures with like the bride and groom, bro, there was a line to take a picture with the bride and groom, which usually happens, and then in the background there's a separate line to take a picture with the one black guy that was at this wedding. Bro, I kid you not, like literally, like Collins was literally just standing there taking pictures of people, and then there was like a line formed, and they were just like, "Hey, let's go take a picture with them. Juanito, look, hey, that's Rudy's friend, XYZ."
See, it's yeah.
So yeah, a little bit of a lighter note, right? But like, it's interesting, right? Like, some of it is out of ignorance, but again, we have to have these conversations. We have to educate, especially for individuals like us who, at some point, felt comfortable with these other communities, and now kind of understand like their struggle and their perspective. We have to share that with people who maybe won't have those conversations, so like we have to enlighten them.
And I think to kind of wrap that up, wrap it up and talk about kind of the last takeaway I took from it, even like time wise, is our community, minorities, and specifically the Latin community in this instance, is really, really powerful when it does unite and get together. And we saw that even when it's not, right? We saw the results of that. Look at the election, right? Look at Florida. A huge part of Florida voters were what, right? It was
shout out to Cubans,
and all that, and it went the way we personally didn't want it to go.
Yeah, for sure.
But they made it happen, right?
But you see the impact that we can have.
They had a huge impact, right?
Absolutely.
And you see in California, there was a large portion of his Latin voters that voted the way we want, right? And you just see that, right? And it's important to have these conversations, like you're saying, and it's important to, whether we get on the same page, same boat, or not exactly, it's going to be progress, but just understand kind of all of these things that we talked about, all the racism, the machismo, the colors, and whatever, and just kind of move forward and get to, a better place and advance our people. I mean, look at, and we can even just take a look at what the Black community was able to achieve, right? Like, that was crazy. It's a beautiful thing what they were able to achieve in
Georgia.
Yeah, Georgia was the main one, but I was thinking like
Michigan,
in order. Michigan
Detroit,
was first, like I think like Michigan and stuff. They flipped with Detroit being
in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, right? Like absolutely, that's an excellent point.
Those two states might, I don't know exactly the history of what states vote what, but Georgia was crazy.
Bro, for now, hey, shout out to Georgia, bro. The entire state except for the counties that went red.
And it's crazy, and they were able to flip a state like Georgia
historically, in the old South, right? This is an old South country state. I'm sorry.
So it just speaks to the power of community.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you hit the nail on the head. I think that's the like you said, our last takeaway is the power that we as a people have, and addressing the things that we've talked about today, and having these conversations with intent and with the purpose of coming together so that we can have a collective impact that I think is beneficial to us and to everyone as a people. Because we have a lot of power both in the economy and politics.
Oh, for sure. It goes beyond politics, right? Like, I think we were just talking about, and all of these things could be their own. Don't get us wrong. Like, all these things could be their own episode, their own, 45-hour whatever conversation. But we just wanted
45 hours is a long time.
Well, not for this podcast, but you know what I mean. We just wanted to quickly kind of touch on some of them and use it almost like a case study sort of, and see what impact they had over the past 4 years and our people. So yeah,
and moving forward, like, that impact is going to just grow more and more, right? Because we're trending in an upward direction. Do you know what percentage of the population Latinos make up? Pop quiz.
All right, here we go. I studied this in human geography. Do I get a multiple choice?
No.
42. No, sorry, no. 33.
No.
Dang it.
You're terribly off.
I can't do math.
That's way too high.
20.
You're
Just
close.
tell me, man.
18.5%,
okay.
Right? Based on census information, which is that's a big chunk of.
Clearly, I failed human geography.
Maybe you're thinking Texas, right? You have a skewed.
You're right.
Yeah, there you go. There's your excuse. I got you, bro. Don't worry.
You got me back, man.
I got you, bro.
I got you.
But nonetheless, you were very wrong. 18.5% is the number.
Okay.
Right, and so that number is expected to trend upward, like I said.
You mean there's more states other than Texas?
Yeah, bro, crazy, right?
Damn.
More than Cali, more than Florida, more than...
Go ahead.
But so it's important to, continue to grow our community, I think, in a responsible way, and have these conversations, because, our power will only increase. And like you said, right, if we can come together and have each other's backs, right? And the hardest part is that there's so many different kind of cultures that are a part of this Latino umbrella. We may not always be able to align on everything, but at least we can try to have these conversations and hopefully get to a better place, because I think right now we have a lot of room to grow, and these last 4 years have definitely shown us that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very well said. We definitely have a lot of room to grow.
For sure. Well, I think that about wraps it up for today.
Whew, that was intense. That was a long one.
That was a lot for sure. There's a lot to talk about.
Could go for days.
Bro, like, I think that's important, right? We said it multiple times, but a lot of these different topics we probably will dive into some of them a little bit deeper, especially like machismo and stuff like that, politics in general. But yeah, no, thank you guys for taking the time out of your day to listen. And any feedback, again, please let us know.
Oh, yeah, real quick. We were joking, but no, seriously, like our interns.
Shout out. Okay, they're not interns.
Yeah, they hate that. Yeah, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Shout out Fabi and shout out Monica. For the record, she's the one that came up with the name, all right? Let me just put that out there
shout
as well.
Out to Monica.
She's the creative.
It is a deserved, yeah.
The creative brain, mastermind behind this operation. So just want to quickly shout out, because they do help us out a lot.
Absolutely.
We're just...
As we're learning how to kind of navigate this through. But with that being said, thank you guys. Y'all have a good rest of your day. And... have a good one. Thank you.